Welcome in, wrong side of the pond. He is DJ Schweitzer. I am Jeremy Lance. We're in two separate locations, partly because you have Montezuma's Revenge floating through your house or something. And I was just tired. I just didn't want to drive up.
Yeah.
I didn't do a lot of driving tomorrow.
It was a good combination of events to work out. One of my children, brought what might be Montezuma's Revenge back from preschool. It's not in Mexico. It's just in northern Cincinnati. So who knows? But it's definitely wreaking havoc on my children right now. Thus far, I'm good. But I didn't want to be responsible for letting it loose into your home, which as we've discussed, you guys have already done like multiple bouts of childhood.
Had that happened, had you have offered that up to us and I brought that home, it would have been our third spin of that since Christmas.
No.
We are the stomach bug capital of Ohio right here.
Well, we're trying to avoid that tonight. So we are back communicating through the internet once again, but we've got a great show packed out for you. This is our annual MLS preview show, something that, at least you and I look forward to. Maybe two or three other people are like, yes, they're talking about MLS again today, and it's kind of relevant for us. So, no, I'm excited about it, though, because it means that MLS is around the corner, and it is, like, literally right around the corner. Like, within days of this show going up, we're going to be watching MLS soccer.
It's weird. I mean, it's really only, like, a week or two than what it would normally start. But it feels like, wow, we're already here.
I know. And they're feeling the same effects that everyone else is feeling in world football right now due to this ridiculous World Cup that we're holding in Qatar and the schedule chaos that's unfolding around it. And MLS is actually having to move up because, think about it, typically MLS Cup is following right after, Thanksgiving, early December. Right. And that's going to be like smack dab in the middle of the World Cup this year.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned this before. As it is set up now, Thanksgiving Day is like match day 3 of the group stages.
Which is awesome. And that tiny little sliver of silver lining that the Qatar World Cup is offering us. It is Thanksgiving Day World Cup matches. That is like the only thing that's good about this tournament. But yeah, MLS is having to get bumped up, and that's why we're getting late February football in Major League Soccer again. I wouldn't be shocked if this becomes a bit of the norm too. Like I would expect this would be something that they try to get out ahead of Major League Baseball a little bit on an annual basis, and baseball's helping that. Right now.
You don't have to run and then speed up to beat baseball to the punch. They're possibly going to be we'll see. But yeah, I mean, like, I feel like MLS has been fairly unsettled of when they want their seasons to end and when they want MLS Cup to happen for like a decade now.
Oh, it's been seesawing all over the place. Like early starts, late starts, really late MLS Cups, super early MLS Cups. Like, and part of it's been like schedule determined, right? When the league was 12 teams, like they could have a final in, October. But as they've added teams, as the playoff format has expanded, the season has had to grow to accommodate all of this growth that the league's had. We've seen it kind of fluctuate still, and I don't know. It's annoying that we're again going to be fluxed again this year, and I know it's a bit out of MLS's hands, but at least we're getting soccer now, right? Like you and I, when we got together last week, we were like, I wonder if there'll be anything on that we can throw on while we're recording, and sure enough, there was the CONCACAF Champions League, like live football in February. Seems wild, but it is what it is, and I'll consume it. Like I'll watch it.
Yeah, no, I'm ready for it. I'm excited for the season to start. I'm excited to get going to matches and just kind of getting into that just good flow of the season where You just kind of have that appointment each weekend to just watch some MLS or even go to some MLS.
I mean, that's the exciting part. There's so much drivable Major League Soccer for us here now. I mean, within an 8-hour radius of Cincinnati, we can hit like over a dozen teams. It seems like now. Like I think we're nearly at that point. We've got a couple new, soccer specific stadiums that are coming. I guess just one this season coming into the equation with Nashville this year, which that's a super easy drive for us too. So yeah, it's exciting. Like, the prospects of actually going to live professional football matches. And we've been spoiled, like in the off season here, we've had, national team matches galore to kind of fill our need and desires for live football. But yeah, it'll be nice to have it on the regular basis again.
I'm excited. We will get to our full preview here in a moment, but we do have a few Premier League things to talk about. Not a whole lot. Kind of largely a sleepy weekend on the Premier League front. Not a lot of fireworks, but there were a few. And we do have to start with your guys, Spurs, doing the double over the reigning and basically current and future champ, Manchester City.
Yeah, and maybe we got a bit ahead of ourselves in saying that both today and in a show or two ago, where we were like, City, like they just have this wrapped up. I guess it was the last show.
Sure.
And like,
do they still not though?
I don't know. I mean, they probably do, but at least it's interesting again. Like, no one wants them to run away with things.
Right. The door is at least cracked open a bit.
Yeah, and I had like all these Liverpool fans, tweeting coys at me over the weekend, like, yeah, come on, you Spurs, because we helped them out. And it's like, you weirdos, like
ugh. I almost want to lose now.
I know, right? Like I'm sorry we did this favor for you. But no, it was like an absolutely crazy, mind-blowing result. Spurs, such an up and down season. We've talked about them all year long, just being agents of chaos in their own rights. But this result just seemed so improbable. Like everything seemed to be on the downturn for them. And now they've flowed back up with this masterclass performance.
I mean, I think last week, I believe the words we were using about their performances at that time were concerning performances by Spurs.
Yeah. And now, you go troll around the Tottenham corners of the internet and you'll find loads of people who have forgotten the misery of 2 weeks ago. And now they are just elated. Conte's taken us to the World Cup final or however that works. And here we go, right? Like that's the up and down nature of the season as it's been. But this match, like we have to spend a little bit of time thinking about it because it seemed like City had it back in their grasp, like on a couple occasions. Like they really seem like, oh crap, they're going to run away with this thing. And
they get that penalty in this match. Yeah.
You know that they're going to dominate the play. You know that they're going to get their chances. And it really felt like after they found themselves, the penalty was definitely, once that happened, you're like, well, here's the shoe dropping. And
right. Because they're just going to take off from here.
Yeah. And
this was also roughly around the same time that Harry Kane's back gave out on him. And he was like out on the ground, was struggling to stand back up. And you're like, so they're going to have to sub him off. They got a penalty there. Okay, the game's tied now. This is a gong show. This is completely falling apart on Spurs.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kane is a bit known for milking it and maybe trying to get a little bit more out of the collisions that he usually brings upon himself. But I wasn't necessarily that super concerned about that. It was more just the flow of the match and how City had the momentum and they really, had fought back twice. Spurs get on the board super early in this, 4 minutes in, and my, it's too early alarm bells are going off in my brain. Like, it's way too early, but you have to enjoy it. And then, Gundogan equalized, and, what was that, about 10 minutes before halftime, and you're like, well, that was a fun, start to the match, and I'm sure we'll get our doors blown off in the second half. And instead it was Spurs who found the front foot again, and it was Kane who put them ahead again just about the hour mark, and Spurs then unfolded some absolutely breathtaking football in the ensuing moments after that. Really should have added a third right around that point, with a 8 or 9 pass movement up the left that culminated in Kane missing a sitter that he normally would put away 10 times out of 10. But here he found himself against it. But once we saw that penalty, 92nd minute, you're like, oh, so close to getting a point here, or getting all. He takes a spectacular penalty, and you're like, well, okay, a point it is. I really had like hung my head, was starting to like pack this stuff up. But Amy and I made it out to the bar this weekend to watch the match, and I was like, all right, this was fun. What's our next move? And then Kane gets that equalizer, or the winner, like just a moment or two later, and I literally didn't know, we didn't even know how to react. There were I'm high-fiving strangers at the bar, literally screaming. People broke out into a chant. I haven't sung at a bar in freaking years, but it was that type of moment. You get sucked up in it a little bit when you find yourself in those type of circumstances. So
certainly. It
was a super fun. It really kicked off my my day in a way I wasn't quite expecting to. We'll say that much.
It's funny you talk about how they didn't they score early in the opener?
It did, yeah.
And that was also like, oh wow, okay, Spurs got this early lead. Surely this won't last.
Well, and in that match they just hung on to the 1-0. They just grabbed onto it, and City dragged them all over the pitch, and somehow managed to make that work. This one felt like one of those City are inevitably going to overwhelm you with just waves of attacks, and they did at times. But we got a couple good stops. Lloris had a monster save late on in the second half that really kept things level, I think, at that point. So I don't know. It's good to see them getting results. I don't know that it's really going to turn the tide too much for this Tottenham side this year. But as you said earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that was my question, actually. Does this change the narrative of this final run for them of the season? And finish what is expected? I mean, does it change anything, or is this just a one-off good performance?
Probably the latter. I mean, the way that we've seen this team perform all year long, we never get consistency on a week out, weekend basis, right? We have a match or two, we look great, then we fall back into bad habits, the weaknesses in the squad pop out. I mean, I think what we saw from this team was really some good performances from the new signings that they brought in. Kulusevski, who had the opener, looked great. His work rate is tremendous. It's weird, for a Spurs player, I'm so used to them having this lightning quick counterattack. Son, Kane, usually Lucas Moura, they just explode down the pitch. Kulu doesn't have that same speed, but he just has a work rate that it grinds for 90 minutes. And then Bentancur in the midfield, he also put in an incredible shift. So I there was promising stuff that I'm hopeful for, but I think it's more for the squad they're building towards rather than the rest of the season. That's
fair. Okay, let's switch to the other big story of the weekend, and it's kind of something that's been slowly happening, and we're now in the midst of the fact that Newcastle have strung a fair bit of results together here. They actually haven't lost since the weekend before Christmas in the league. And they find themselves out of the drop at the moment, playing relatively decent football for what needs to, for what the job is at hand. Are you a believer in what's happening with Newcastle now? has Eddie Howe got things going? Has he got the players he needs? Like, is this actually going to happen? Are they going to survive this?
Well, I think they were always a team that was probably like playing less than the sum of their parts. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I think if you could get someone in there to get them sing a little bit different tune, like maybe they would be able to stay up regardless. I think that squad's good enough to stay up. I do think
we've seen sides that had good parts still go down.
Oh, sure. Like it happens all the time. But they made some good additions. I think Eddie Howe at least has experience in this realm. Like he's guided teams away from the drop before, back in his Bournemouth days. You know, they had a couple scary seasons before they eventually met their fate. But I think they're doing the right things. They've hit some roadblocks in that Kieran Trippier is out for a few weeks. He's got a broken bone in his foot, I think. And that leaves them obviously without a guy who they really were hoping would be a bit of a catalyst from them from an experiential standpoint. But I don't want to say I'm optimistic before them because from a drama standpoint, I'm all about them going down. But from a like narrative standpoint for what's happening this season, I think it's very interesting. What is frightening about them actually staying up is if they stay up, what they do in the summer. And like I think that's I mean, we've gone silent and we've not really talked much about like the potential impact of that. And everyone was like, oh, they were so quiet in January. Like, well, what the hell did you expect them to do? You know, there was talk that they like tabled a bid for Mbappe, but of course he was going to brush that aside. Like,
right.
So
what respectable top level talent was going to be like, yeah, I'll come show up for this relegation battle.
Yeah. Well, they were talking about, you know, someone like Aubameyang being a realistic target, and perhaps he was to a certain extent. But as soon as Barcelona comes knocking, like, of course he's going to be like, well, you know, I'll make a lot of money there, and it's Barcelona. Like, right. I can go.
Like I've somehow failed my way into a better position.
Yeah, mind you, too, he dropped a hat trick.
Over the weekend.
So, he certainly hit the ground running over in Spain. But I don't know. I'm optimistic for them. I think they're doing some of the right things to stay up. They're certainly playing better. And then I do think Chris Wood, their New Zealand striker, had the absolute. I was so close to making him my winner this week because he incited a complaint from the West Ham captain to the referee when they played over this past week. Because he kept meowing at Kurt Zuma throughout the course of the match. I mean, like, I was so close to making him my winner over this. It was like truly incredible. Like, I like that it gets to Kurt Zuma that meowing is actually a thing. So, if nothing else, I hope they stay up so that Chris Wood can do that to him next year as well.
That's pretty fantastic. Okay. I not to rush our way stateside, but
Russia.
That's what this episode's about.
Yeah. Let's
go.
Russia.
MLS preview. I guess we'll start with is it seven playoff teams?
Maybe. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's 7. It was 7 last year.
Yeah, it's probably
Don't know
7.
why we would go down.
It seems unlikely.
MLS
has contracted before, so you never know.
That is true. Yeah. And then there was like the 2020 where like they let basically like 2/3 of the league make the playoffs.
Why not? It's a pandemic here, man. Just let everyone in.
Yeah. We all need a break. Okay, let's do you want to go west or east first?
All right, so if this is the first time that you've listened to our MLS preview, or literally any of our season previews, because we pretty much do the exact same thing for the Premier League as well, we're going to run down who we think are going to be the top finishers in the leagues, each conference. We'll then pick Supporter Shield. We'll do who we think is going to lift the cup. Then we're going to do some individual awards. And then we're going to do 3 things that we both hope to see over the course of this 2022 Major League Soccer campaign. Good summary?
Cool.
All right.
That is what we are doing.
All right.
That is a quality summary.
Yeah, let's go out west then.
Okay.
Let's start out west because we're much more familiar with the East to a certain extent.
Sure.
So these are more of our shots in the dark. We don't see many of these teams as often here, so
got to stay up till like 10:30 to watch half these matches.
Man, we're parents. It's tough sometimes to do that, but we're gonna do our best here to not make ourselves look like total morons. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to go start at the top?
Okay, we'll start at the top.
Okay.
I have Seattle first place in the West.
I also have Seattle first place at the West.
I think they are going to be really good.
Yes.
Really good. I mean, I was saying this to someone the other day, like, like MLS is like a lot of those leagues where, like, in the US where, like, you can there's a handful of teams you can just go ahead and pencil in every year as these teams are going to be good. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to be contenders. And the West has a few of those. So I go Seattle 1.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go I'm going to go their nemesis. I'm going to go Portland 2.
Ooh. I had Portland. They're in
not as high though.
They're in my West, but they're not nowhere near as high. I actually had them down in 6th.
Okay.
I feel like we're hitting the end of the Diego Chara era, and that
sure.
I'm waiting for his legs to not be there anymore. And they never seem to ever meet this expectation. But they're also a bit of a team in transition. Obviously, we're seeing a legend depart the club, and they still have a guy like Sebastian Blanco who's there, who's going to be impactful, great, one of the better players in the league. But I just don't know that they've brought in the pieces that really are going to accentuate that and squeeze the last drops out of this era and team that they have here.
So my feeling on this is I feel like you got Seattle and then you got a bunch of other good contender playoff teams. But as far as like how confident level, it's a real mixed bag after Seattle.
I was going to bring that up next because that's exactly how I felt. I felt like I could have shifted around my 2 through 6 spots in the West, maybe even all the way down to 7th and 8th if we go down that deep. It feels like a lot of those places were very interchangeable, whereas number 1 out West is clear and far away. Like Seattle, think about they were missing Nicolas Lodero for most of last season. They had, no Jordan Morris all the way up until the playoffs, essentially. So it's definitely one of those squads that is improving with the pieces they already have within it, and that's not even including the smart business they seem to do year in year out.
So who you next?
Oh yeah. So who do I see next? I think who I think is most likely to jump up into that 2nd spot, and this probably won't be very well liked here in these parts, but I think Nashville is super primed to be one of those teams this year. Yeah.
Now I wonder, and I heard some people. I think the guys on Extra Time were kind of pointing this out a bit. They could be really good. They could also be a victim of the fact that they have to play in the West. Not that the West is somehow infinitely harder, but every away match is outside of the Kansas City match. It's kind of a heck of a flight.
Yeah.
These aren't short little, popping up to Cincinnati or popping down to Atlanta.
Yeah, they've got
popping over to Vancouver.
They've got Kansas City is relatively, it's obviously the closest one, but the 3 Texas teams really aren't that far off for them either. I think it's those supreme West Coast teams because Nashville's damn near, and I think Chicago's suffered from this when they've had bouts in the West as well, where they just have to go play all these super late games. You and I are complaining about staying up and watching them. Like these guys have to go play in them. And when you live in the Eastern time zone, yeah, you might travel out to LA the day before, 2 days before, whatever it might be. Maybe you're on a road trip and you get acclimated a little bit more. But your body's still used to playing at the normal times that you're going out and kicking balls. And if you were like, hey, go, if you're not used to playing at 10:30 at night, like your body is gonna not do all that well with that, even if you've been out there a couple of days and gotten time adjusted. So
Right.
it's a tough one. But
I actually
like
don't
that.
have them making the playoffs because of that.
Woo.
Also because I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of faith in some of that they got going on.
They're so defensively sound, and sure. Me, I'm rooted in defensive thinking. They just don't concede goals, and and sometimes in Major League Soccer that's enough. And I don't know. I mean, you're right. It's a far more competitive landscape out west. I think they're going to be not rolling over teams as easily as they do out east, but they've been so wise in the way that they've constructed their squad and the way they keep doing business. I think they're sitting on like loads of gam and tam at the moment, and I just feel like they're waiting to drop a hammer on us with either a couple really intelligent signings or maybe even like a big DP type of move. So that's something that I would expect they're probably waiting for the summer to unfold and see if they can get something a little bit bigger there. But yeah, I'm relatively optimistic about what I think Nashville could do this season.
Okay. My number 3 will be the bounce back of LAFC.
Yeah, I really waffled a bit on LAFC, or who I eventually put here, who was Sporting KC, who are facing some issues themselves. But LAFC, the reason why I was a little nervous about putting them very high in the regular season is because this is a first-year head coach that we're facing.
Yeah.
Essentially Steve Cherundolo. And he's had a little bit of time working at, Las Vegas Lights and whatever the clown show is they've got going on there. And they're essentially LAFC's reserve squad now. So expectations and results weren't necessarily aligned with one another. But I was a little hesitant to put them up that high given his inexperience there.
But I thought about LAFC had a few issues going for them last year. One of them, the main one, I think, was just they were a team that struggled to stay healthy. And if they get healthy years out of a healthy season out of their key players, something they really didn't have last year, I think they're going to be flying high again.
Do you think the subtraction of Bob Bradley is an addition at this point?
I don't know if it was I don't know. I mean, I definitely think you could sense that it was time for change, which doesn't necessarily mean that the manager was no longer knew what he was doing. It's just kind of that, that atmosphere, that ethos, whatever that manager brings, just was no longer effective in the way that it was when he at the beginning there for them.
Yeah,
when they flew out of the gates with such a hot start as a franchise.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for a healthy Carlos Vela this year. I think that's the one thing that I think everyone in the league and perhaps in the league office is really hoping for out of LAFC.
You said you had Sporting Kansas City. I had them 4th. So why don't we just kind of go into them here real quick?
Yeah. So, I mean, they're a team that's had to deal with a lot of, we talked about injuries. They've really been dealing with it over the last few years. And obviously they've seen some key departures too. And guys like Busio, who's, made a decent life for himself over in Italy after moving to Venezia. But, the absence of Alan Pulido last year was massive for them.
Right.
And I wouldn't expect that he's going to be. Is he fully up and running by the start of the season? I don't know that he's even back yet. So
I don't know. I don't know. I think that's kind of I don't know if that's known yet.
Yeah. But it shows you the level of punditry here. But at the same time, if he's not back at the start of the campaign, or if he is, and he's not fully up to speed, we're not going to see the same thing. But Peter Vermes is like the elder statesman now, I feel like, of the league. Like, he's been around in this same damn role forever, that even if I'm like a little off in my thinking about where the squad is, he's like enough of a rock that I feel good about just throwing them in the middle of the conference standings and being like, here you go. Like, you'll be all right around here.
Yeah, totally. I mean, they're kind of, again, they're one of those sides that you just kind of can bank on them being good. Again, sometimes I guess that doesn't really work out. Sometimes they have a lot of injuries. Sometimes just things get stale and stuff falls apart, and it doesn't totally work out that way. But yeah, actually, so I'm reading now. It sounds like he's actually going to miss the season.
Yeah, so he's fully out for the rest of the campaign. So yeah, that impacts stuff, right? But they've always found a way to kind of like skirt around those type of issues. So
right, it's as much as he was a big thing. It's not like he's a guy that is the only thing going for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see them as a team that still plays very well. I see them as a team that's just, yeah. I mean, Vermeer's not just going to have this team just falling apart on him. Like he's going to make it happen.
Yeah.
There's just way too much competency in that organization for them to falter too badly. Why don't you? Who do you have in fourth?
So I had LAFC, so we were just flopping spots there.
Okay.
When you get down to these 5, 6, 7 places,
sure,
out west, I feel like I'm grasping at straws here a little bit. But one of them that I feel very confident that will be in the mix is Colorado. Like they were the surprise side last year, but they're playing intelligent, common sense football out there. They seem to be working within a system and mindset that they know is going to be successful with their limited resources. And I would expect that they're going to be, given that they're not a totally remade side, that they'll at least be sneaking into the playoffs, if not a little bit higher up in the standings.
Yeah, I do have them. I guess you could maybe call it sneaking in. I do have them as my 7th team.
Okay.
The other 2 teams I have on my list are Minnesota and the Galaxy. Galaxy obviously make the alleged big upgrade by bringing in a Douglas Costa, who has both started Champions League and World Cup qualifiers relatively recently, and yet also I think there are some questions as where he's at in his career.
I would say closer to the beach than anything else at this point.
Yeah, possibly.
Right? I mean, he's 31. He's a winger, which is probably the type of player that Chicharito needs to help carry a little bit of the load. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like someone that Chicharito is always, he's a poacher, right? So he needs a guy who's going to give him the service that he wants.
You lose Sebastian Lletget to New England.
Right. And I think that's going to have some waves to them. And I don't know, have they adequately replaced that? It's not something that I'm certain of, to be perfectly honest. But when you, I don't know, like this seems like a team that still lacks, the North Star that they're aligning themselves to at this point. In the aftermath of those like years of success that we saw during the last Bruce Arena campaign there.
Yeah, I mean, this is still a club that is trying to recreate the magic time and time again of we're just going to keep just bringing in big names. And, I mean, it's been a while since that's really worked for them.
Yeah, I mean, we've really not seen anything really pan out for them over the last few years. I mean, it's even Chicharito. MLS worked so damn hard to get him here for so long, and of course it's LAFC the Galaxy that jump out and get him, but they've not. It seems like they were like, oh, we got him, and that was the plan. Like, yeah, that was the extent of the plan. Like, hey, if we actually get Chicharito, what are we going to do with him here? And he doesn't always, seem the happiest character there now. And, I do wonder what the long-term prospects of Chicharito look like in Major League Soccer at this point.
So the other team I had was Minnesota. I think they're staying the course. I feel like they might have a little bit of a dip. It might be a little more of an arduous season as far as just making sure you get into the playoffs, but I still see them pulling that off.
Yeah. I think that's a good possibility. I had them missing out this year, but a lot of change in their midfield. No Ozzy Alonso, which he's like almost a playoff shoe-in for most of the sides that he's
okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I had them as the side that potentially slipped out this year.
Okay. Did you have any other teams? Or did we get your 7?
We got my 7. So
okay. All right.
It's time for us to head over out east. What was weird about the Eastern Conference is it feels a bit opposite. Like I felt like the top of the Eastern Conference. Well, I think there are some likely players in that category. I was unsure about where they might fall in the final order and standings. Whereas,
what I feel about the East is you have a handful of teams that are like, yeah, absolutely, and then like I feel like 5, 6, and 7. It's like, yeah, I mean, they might make the playoffs or they might finish 10th. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of middling mediocrity, if that's even the best case scenario in the East. Like some of the league's worst operators reside in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
Like I know neither one of us are going to pick Charlotte to finish in our top 7 because their head coach is literally having press conferences saying we're screwed. Like ahead of the season, which is amazing from an honesty standpoint, but also like potentially the worst thing that you could have a head coach say. They really seem like they've not paid attention to any of the bad moves that anyone has made in like the last decade, and I feel like this Charlotte team's had plenty of time to watch and learn.
You could have literally just taken some notes exclusively on how FC Cincinnati operated over these past 3 years and be like, all right, this is what we don't want to
do. I mean, Miami is in the East. You could have watched them and been like, I mean, they aren't doing what Miami are doing. They're doing far more of what FCC did, just without like a second division team to bring players from.
Without 11 USL players.
They're far more that than they are, the other way around. So I don't know. It's there are a lot of really bad teams out east, and I think a lot of those bad teams will remain bad for most of this campaign, if not maybe a little improved.
But there's like some of them are like, well, if they do a little bit better, like maybe they do. Maybe they do make the playoffs.
Like I think that's the bottom edge of the playoff line in the East. Has a little bit more wiggle room for someone who is questionable to sneak in than it does out west.
Right. So I have Atlanta United actually as my 1 seed. I'm going bold.
Ooh, that is bold.
In fact, not only am I saying that they're the 1 seed, go ahead and write it down. I'm actually going to say that they're my supporter shield winner because of what we just talked about. Man. There's a lot of bad teams in the East.
There are.
I see Atlanta as a team that is just going to get fat off of bad teams.
I hear that.
And they're going to get to play Charlotte and Miami a buttload of times.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not at all. I'll be honest. You had them at second. At first. I had them at second. So it's not like I'm that far out of bounds here.
It's not like, I had them 6.
No. I certainly didn't have them down near that far. But, I mean, I think this Atlanta side is, and I do think that it's more than likely an East side that will end up with the Shield because there are there's low-hanging fruit to pick off. Mm-hmm. Down there at the bottom ends of the table, but yeah, it's Atlanta at the top is and the supporter shield. It's a big pick there.
That is a big pick. I felt like once they got their new manager in at the end of the season, got things going. I just felt like we got the Atlanta United we knew back.
Oh, I mean they're spending big again, right?
Yeah.
They've shipped out some of these guys that didn't
Yeah,
really
they
make.
finally ship out a guy like Barco, who's like, did that ever really totally work out? Like,
He was their second big one. You know what I mean?
right.
Where they were like, "Ooh, we're active out east.
Look at
That's
us.
what we're doing. Look at we're world players here." And he just really didn't pan out, and he's going back home. But yeah, I mean, I think there's room for them to potentially be one of the elite squads in the East this season.
So who did you have number one then?
So this was one I said that I really struggled with who I thought was going to land up top, but I think it's going to be Philadelphia again. I think
Okay.
even though they've seen some key departures, they more than any team in the league seem like they have a clearly defined pathway and plan in place. Like, yeah, they lost Chris Albright, who is a major player, but they still have their head technical director. They still have Jim Curtin, who's arguably one of the best coaches in the league and is certainly one of the most well-liked coaches in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when Albright left, they probably already had their like next month, or not month, but 12 months planned out. And they're like, here are our targets. Here's what we've been working on, like boom, boom, boom. And yeah, Albright knows all that. And maybe he can pip some of that and whatever. But I do think that they kind of have a game plan in mind. And I don't really see them losing any steps this season, based off of what we've seen out of them the last few campaigns.
Yeah, no, I mean they're just a team that can replenish themselves. They know what they are. They're confident in what they've built and how they can just, they're a system. They're, your New England Patriots, where it's like, yeah, we can. We have what we're doing, and we can plug in other pieces if we need to, and we're just gonna not really skip a beat too much. So I have Philly at 3.
Okay.
So I have New England at 2.
Okay, that's who I had at 3.
Okay, all right. So New England. Listen, I think this is still a side that Bruce Arena's got moving in the right direction, and obviously they had the unfortunate end to their season last year, where they didn't get the job done when so many thought that this was finally going to be their year. But I'm not picking right now if they're winning the cup or not. I'm picking how they're going to finish in the regular season, and Bruce Arena has built a fantastic regular season squad.
Yeah, but Arena, he's like the master to me of like having the team sleepwalk through the regular season,
Sure.
and then switching them on at the right time. And I wonder about this team. They lost. When I initially was starting to pencil things in, I was like New England right back at the top, and then I went, well, they've lost Tajon Buchanan. They're going to lose Matt Turner most likely in the summer.
Right. Or will they? Like, I understand that's when the transfer ends up happening, but like, do you not see a situation where he like immediately goes back out on loan to them or whatever? Because I mean, maybe this is me not being super optimistic about what his Arsenal career is going to look like, but like he is not, like, they're not sitting there at Arsenal going like, oh man, he better hurry up and get here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, and we don't know what kind of impact he's going to have there. I agree with you. To me, he seems like reserve keeper material to an Arsenal, right? Like he doesn't seem like the caliber of keeper that they want to get
Like
to that next level. And maybe he can grow into that. And I'm not a goalkeeper expert by any stretch, but
straight up right now, how many matches this season, or this coming season, I guess, because it'll be next season that he essentially goes to Arsenal. The 2022-2023 Arsenal campaign, Matt Turner, across all competitions, starts how many matches?
It depends on if they land in the Champions League or not, which I think is unlikely.
Nope, they'll be Europa
Yeah.
at
I
best.
say he gets 12 starts.
Wow. Okay.
That's
I was gonna go
optimistic.
like 5.
That's like if they get out of the group stage of the Europa League.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It again, shoot, if they finish low enough down and they have to go through any of the qualifying phases, like maybe he gets a few of those in too. But I don't I get what you're saying, but I think with those departures, I think they're really going to be feeling it in a way that
Okay.
maybe some of the other teams wouldn't have. And I think that does leave them, though, in a position to be very dangerous in the playoffs. And I think Carles Gil is still such a good player that I think he's an X factor in a way that, a lot of teams in MLS don't necessarily have.
So I had Philly third. You had New England where?
I had them at third. So
okay. So
yeah.
Who do you have in fourth?
My fourth place, this one, I thought about this a bit. Toronto.
That's who I have.
Oh, we're on the same wavelength here. Bob Bradley on our mind now that he's moved a little bit closer to us.
Big moves going on over there.
Big moves.
Bring in your big manager. You bring in Bob Bradley. You get rid of basically what all of your DPs essentially had, or at least 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, Josie Altidore out. You either they buy it out. They just got rid of that guy. He goes to New England to do something. They bring in. I mean, they kind of went for it on who they brought in, and there's still speculation that they're going to make a third move in the summer.
I mean, I think they're definitely going to try to make a third move if they can. It does not seem that Giovinco will be that player for them.
No.
But I think, if they can, keep their head above water and they implement Bob's system quickly, he knows what he's doing. He knows how to deploy his boy out there. I think, Michael will be a bit of, this is the twilight of his career. So I think he's hoping that he can get one more in before this is all said and done as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think if by the time Insignia lands in the summer, I can't imagine him not hitting the ground running and just blowing the doors off the league once he gets here, if he's getting good service. So, I anticipate that Toronto is going to be a dangerous team, and in particular when it comes playoff time, I think that's when they could really potentially be shining.
They also grab Carlos Salcedo from Tigres. And then there is wide speculation that it'll be another third big name move happening in the summer. I don't know. I feel like Toronto is making the big gamble, though. As big as these names are, and is like, wow, as high as a caliber as they are, it's still, and maybe it's just because Toronto has sort of done this before, maybe not at this caliber. But like Toronto has gone, let's just throw a bunch of money around before, and it didn't totally work out.
Yeah. I mean, we've definitely seen them take a lot of different strategies and mostly only find success when they've gone big. So I think that's why they're trying big again. And, they've really tried to small ball it the last few years, right? Like, I think they were living under the weight of some of those DP contracts that they had handed out, in the years past. Josie barely being a factor for so long certainly had a negative impact on where they are and where they find themselves now. So I do wonder, if they've shaken off all of the bad juju that's kind of lingered around there for so long. But I think it's going to be enough to see them into the playoffs at a minimum.
Yeah, it's interesting how they've kind of done this reload without having to really rebuild, right? Like that. I mean, they're relatively fresh off a run where they made 3 finals.
Yeah, wasn't that long ago.
No, not at all. And then here they are already reloading with some players and a manager that I think they feel like they will have something that will make an immediate impact and be a contender right out the gate. Fifth, I have your reigning MLS Cup champs, NYCFC in fifth.
Yeah.
I think they'll be fine. Obviously, there's a big thing about like Toddy. Like, does he get moved in the summer? You know, does he go to greener pastures in Europe or somewhere? So that I think that could dictate some of this, because I think he is that impactful of a player.
Yeah, I mean, and founding team, like I really feel like they snuck up on a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like it was, we know they're good. We know they've got good players. We know that, you know, they've got the money and all that kind of fun stuff. But they don't seem like a team that anyone, unless you like follow the league religiously, that you know a whole lot about. So I had them in sixth. Like their home field advantage, whatever you want to call that, remains such like a weird factor for them that you just don't know what they're going to be. And yeah, they're returning a lot of the same pieces, and you know, Ronnie Delia is still there, and you know he'll know how to play in that environment. But
will they have their home field advantage though? With the season ending sooner and the playoffs then actually happening more in October and November, I don't know how well the Yankees are projected to go, but like you could have a situation where the Yankees make a playoff run and they don't get there, and they have to go play at Red Bull Arena.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Nope.
better than their home game at Los Angeles for, you know, the
Championes or whatever
Champions League, yeah, or whatever that was. So yeah, just their flux of that club remains an X factor that I think would potentially have an impact on the season, and I just don't know that they're going to be singing as good of a song as they sang at the end of that last campaign.
It's weird that they've become this like really like a good roster that's like fairly, you kind of mentioned it, like there's not a whole lot of like household names that anybody's like, unless you're a real MLS dork, is like rattling off. Like they're a bit of an inside baseball kind of team. Like they've have a well built, you know, system, a squad of guys that aren't exactly like these big flashy names. They brought in a manager that I think not a lot of people had super high hopes on, and he's done great. They win MLS Cup. They're like they should be. They're in the biggest market. They should be kind of the darling of MLS, but at the same time, they're also kind of the blight of MLS because they are this super flashy big market team that is still playing on a stinking baseball field.
Oh man, MLS dodged a bullet with them not hosting that game. They were so close to hosting it. It would have just been. It really. I was
no
looking
way
forward to it.
MLS would have tried to move it, right?
They definitely would have tried.
Just come up with excuses. Well, the press box, we needed the ESPN cameras needed more room for their cameras. Yeah.
So that's what we're doing, and sorry about your luck. So we both have them down near the bottom. I had Columbus actually in fifth. I'm so intrigued to see what Caleb Porter does with this Columbus side this year. They missed the playoffs last year after hoisting the cup in the weird pandemic season that was 2020. His sides usually do really well the year after they miss the playoffs. So
okay.
And then they usually after that they have a bad year. So
and then he gets fired.
So we're about in that range of his life cycle in Columbus. They're playing in yellow kits this year, so you know maybe that'll be enough of the special stuff to get them over the line. Yeah.
I don't have them making the playoffs.
It's I could see it going that way potentially.
I mean, I'm not seeing the additions where I'm like, okay, that's gonna fix some of the issues that they had defensively. Some of the issues they had I just felt like they were a team last year that just struggled to create at times.
Yeah.
I mean, you have this impact player in Zelerion, and I felt like it was kind of just him by himself there because you had guys like Zardes and others just kind of really not stepping up. I mean, you had what's his name? Which I believe is as Is Pedro gone?
No, I think he's back for the season.
Okay, he's back.
Yeah.
But like he was relatively anonymous last year after being a very important piece of their cup run.
Yeah, I mean, Columbus was one of those teams that really struggled with injuries last campaign too.
Yeah.
And Pedro Santos is one of those players. Kevin Molino, who they brought over from Minnesota, who had been so dynamic for them the year before. He blew his ACL out like in their first or second game. So it was, they were without him. So I'm sure that'll hopefully be a bit of the addition they were aiming for last year. But I could also see like it really, the wheels falling off and, they miss out on the playoffs. So I wouldn't be shocked. That's for sure.
I have Orlando in 6th place.
Oh man. So I had NYFC there. Orlando, I had on the outside looking in. I think they lost some really key pieces for a team that just tripped their way into the playoffs last year. Nani's gone. Obviously they've lost Daryl DK as well. Mm-hmm. And Mueller's left too, who I think has been really impressive for them. So I think that's a lot of turnover, and I don't know that Alexander Pato is enough to really change the sail on those wins.
You talking about 2022 comeback player of the year, Pato?
Yeah, that one.
I definitely think. Again, this is what we said when we first moved over to the East. The teams here at the bottom of the playoff spots could either make the playoffs or finish 10th or worse.
Yeah.
It could just as reasonably go either direction.
Yeah, I mean, there's reason for optimism, and they have Oscar Pereja, and that dude knows what he's doing. So, if anyone's going to drag someone who doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs, it'll probably be him. But, conversly, I have Montreal sitting in 7th place.
Okay, I have them.
Yeah, but, I mean, they're always being taken. Like, what are they doing? What are they doing up there? What are they doing?
Doing what they always do, just winning just enough Champions League matches, 1-0.
Yes. All they have to do is take the Voyagers Cup seriously every year, and they're playing international football. Yeah.
I have Chicago in 7th place.
I thought about them too. I really did. It seemed like way too big of a turnover year for them, which they have won like every 3 years. But I secretly am pulling for Chicago to fill that 7th spot.
I think this could be a good year for them. I think it could be a year where Shaqiri dazzles. The new branding goes over well in the city, and playing downtown. I think this could be a very pivotal year for just the organization as far as the footprint they have in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, one would hope, because they've really not been making many footprints anywhere in Chicago for a while.
No. Did you have another? Did we get all 7 of your teams?
We got all 7 of mine in.
Okay.
So
all right. So
we reached our zenith. So you've already told us who you think is hoisting the shield this year. You think it's going to be Atlanta?
Yes. And you think it's going to be?
I actually think it's going to be Seattle. I think they're just too damn good.
I think Seattle. I definitely think there's a scenario where Seattle is so dominant out west that they I think that could definitely happen to where they clinch a playoff spot insanely early.
Like in June.
I think they will clinch a playoff spot before kids go back to school.
Yeah, that is far more realistic than June, but I could totally see it happening. So both excellent picks. But let's really go out on a limb here, because we know the regular season title rarely actually means that you're going to lift the actual MLS Cup at the end of the campaign. Who do you see doing that? Who goes on the playoff run?
So I see Seattle winning it all.
Yeah.
I think
thought
Seattle
about
has
this.
a pedigree to make it through MLS playoffs.
See, this is where I did my wild card, and I went with Atlanta United.
No, look at us.
Yeah.
Just swapping there. All right.
Yeah, we were really just swapping. I felt like they're throwing money around again, and
Sure.
with how wishy-washy the East is, I could see them getting hot at the right time and just tearing through the playoffs. Like that seems like Joseph Martinez getting on a heater at the end of a campaign. Like couldn't you see him
Absolutely.
riding all the way to a cup? So
I think
that's
he
my
will
pick.
get on a heater. In fact, let's segue into that. My Golden Boot winner, Joseph Martinez. I think we're like, 2018, 2019 Joseph. I think we're going to get him just pouring him in.
So I actually have that as one of the three things that I wanted to see in 2022 was I wanted to see Joseph come back and be the king again and be that beast in Major League Soccer that we saw in those early years with Atlanta. And I think he can do it again. And I think if he's got the right supporting cast behind him again, then we'll see it. So, yeah, I didn't have him, but I had Nicholas Lodero. I think he's so influential to the way that Seattle plays. And I think him not being his normal self last year was what left them short. And I think he will be the difference maker for them this year.
Who is your Landon Donovan MVP?
This is one it's so tough. Like you just never know what the criteria is going to be for who wins an MLS MVP. Sometimes they give it to the guy who's like it's not even the best player on the best team. It's like the best leader on the best team.
Right.
It's always such a weird one, but tend to get it done in Major League Soccer. Like that tends to be the spot where it is. So I think Nicholas Lodero there as well. I feel like he's got that campaign balled up in him this year, the season of a lifetime. And I think Seattle is that team that could potentially be one of those all-timers in MLS.
So I'm going bold on this one. I as I said, I think Chicago is making the playoffs, and I think it is going to be on the back and the triangle-shaped torso of Shaqiri.
I think a lot of hopes are being pinned on Shaqiri, and I'm going to revisit him for my three things here in a couple minutes. So, but yeah, I could totally see that kind of thing playing out too. It'd be awesome for the internet if nothing else.
Manager of the year.
Yeah, so this one I'm going to go back to one of my kind of more bold picks in the rankings, and I'm actually going to go with Gary Smith in Nashville. I think his defense-first approach is going to win and turn some heads out in the very competitive West, and I think he may finally get some of the dues that he's probably owed for the team that he just keeps putting together out there.
I went super conservative. I just said Jim Curtin.
I
think he's always going to be in the mix for it. I did think I could definitely see a scenario where, again, kind of going with what I just did with Shaqiri, where a Ezra Hendrickson, legitimately, if Chicago makes the playoffs, he will absolutely be one of the top picks for that.
Oh, easily. The league would love to give him that sort of attention as well. Yeah. And I think, MLS, these coach of the years, or it's either like someone who wins the damn league or it's someone who like drags someone into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, we see that even in the Premier League, right? Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
It's not just Guardiola every single year. It's him some of the times, but you sometimes give it to those guys that like, yeah, you finish like 5th or 6th or 7th or whatever, but like, dang, that's a pretty good job considering what club you had.
Yeah, exactly. My almost safe pick there was Brian Schmetzer. So,
what other superlatives did you do? Did you do any others?
Yeah, I had a couple other ones.
Okay.
So this is one that it kind of plays into my hopes and dreams for Shaqiri in the league. I really am looking forward to him squaring up to someone that's taller than him in the league this year, and like that little mean mug, angry Napoleon face that he makes when someone really upsets him, and he just squares up like, I can take you. It doesn't matter. I'm strong enough. And I'm really looking for like a Shaqiri scrapper this year. Like I want him to get really pissed off with some third-rate MLS outside back that just takes a whack at him. And I want him to be like a head taller than Shaqiri, and just for all of the angry vibes flowing up from him. Like I love that imagery of him, and Major League Soccer needs him like staring bare-chested and challenging someone. I think that's what I'm really looking forward.
I get that. Was there a person you want? Like, where's Omar Gonzalez playing right now? Like, that would be a good one. Like, that's a good height disparity there.
Yeah, I think he was playing in Toronto last I saw. I don't know if he's still there. So
he's in New England.
Okay, there you go. Back with the boss.
Got to do it. So I guess we're on to things we're looking forward to. Is that what we're doing here?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where we're.
Did you have sack? I don't know if we did sack race for MLS.
I don't think we did sack race.
I just put Phil Neville. That's almost surely going to be the answer, right?
You would hope, but David Beckham and him are homies.
He ain't going to fire his buddy, is he?
Yeah, you know what I mean. The other thing that I had, like, I really want to see this happen in Major League Soccer this year, and this seems like such a low bar, but I want some actual progress in Cincinnati. I feel like it's reachable.
So that's what that's one of mine. I literally just put, I want a competent local MLS side. It's competency. That's all we're asking for.
Show me that you know that you're building towards that.
Competent soccer, play some meaningful matches still, like in like mid to late summer. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
If you're still like at least mathematically alive at that point, like that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Another one I put up there. This is going to be something I think actually we're going to hear about relatively soon. And that is what will become of this looming future MLS TV right package that will change up after this season. And so I believe Garber said something to the effect of how that was something that was supposed to be sorted out in Q1 of 2022, which, like, I would say we're getting close to the end of Q1. So, like, I would imagine that gets announced by like the late spring, possibly even sooner. But what is that going to look like? So that they're looking for a lot more money than what they currently have. I think their current deal that's split between Fox and ESPN is like, I think it's like $90 million. They're looking for like a lot. I mean, they want something closer to like a $3 million or $300 million contract that like NHL or whatever their stuff is, like just something comparative to that. Who's going to do that? B, what's that going to look like as far as, is that going to include, there's a lot of talks about how that will also include, essentially there won't be home and away broadcast teams anymore, is what they're floating. It'll almost be like almost be basically like how kind of the NFL does, how like every NFL game is televised with just the one national broadcast crew.
Yeah,
so there's talks about moving to that system.
Yeah, I mean that would be kind of a return back to what FCC experienced in the USL days when they had the centralized, Mike Watts led, broadcast team. I don't know. It is such an interesting transitionary period for MLS, because what happens with that will be so crucial to how the league moves forward. I'm exceptionally nervous about how the league is going to handle local broadcasts, and I am very not confident that they're going to make the right choice. I feel like
we've seen this go badly very recently. I mean, just with what FC Cincinnati has done with their Flow TV choice that they made early on in their MLS days. You've had DC United did the same. You've had some DC United also then eventually went to like where It was literally, I mean, it was available on no channels locally. You basically were just watching it off their website. LAFC, their local deal is done through YouTube TV, I believe.
Yeah, I think that deal is ending this season as well. So
right, yeah. Well, so that's the thing. MLS basically made it to where all deals will end
after this campaign.
Because next year it all possibly moves to an in-house format. Who is it gonna be that's running this? You know, that one article I was reading today kind of pointed out that, you know, the Premier League rights that were just done this past fall, you had a lot of people at the table trying to put bids in for that, and ultimately won it again. And that leaves, you know, obviously you have ESPN and Fox likely to be in the discussions as the people that currently have the bid. Amazon could be one that you could see make a real strong move for that. CBS has all of a sudden just heard about soccer. They're buying up properties left and right. That could be an option as they also try to grow out their Paramount Plus platform. I don't know. We don't know where it's going to go. It could really go a number of directions.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting season in Major League Soccer, and certainly interesting developments to happen around the league in this campaign and the one to follow too. So I think that gets us to the end of our MLS preview, and we're on to winners and wankers before we say goodbye to you. You want to start with your wanker?
My wanker, keeping it with MLS theme, and this has been going on for a season or two now, but Adidas's new thing where the replica and the authentic literally aren't the same jersey anymore. Like, aren't the same design anymore, basically. Like, we cut out some of the trim and some of the accent, you know, coloring that we use. Especially with now, I mean, if you wanted to get the FC Cincinnati secondary kit that was just launched, finally the orange kit that everybody had been wanting,
super good looking
since
kit.
Day one of the club, like
super good looking kit.
And it's finally one that's not just straight up a template. It's got unique watermarks and jock tags that are Cincinnati centric. Very exciting, very good looking kit. If you buy the replica, you don't get some of that accent blue on like the cuffs and the like, and so it kind of then just becomes more of just a orange jersey with nothing else on it. It's not as great. So you want to get the authentic, but and then you also, you know, maybe you want to get an authentic with Kubo or a Costa or something like that. That jersey is going to cost you $159. That's where that's now where we're at with these. Okay.
It's like buying a hockey sweater at this point, you know, which I don't know if you looked at those things recently. They're also way more expensive than when we used to purchase them as kids as well.
Oh yeah.
And we've seen this trend in jerseys going on for years now, as the prices have crept up. What I find most intriguing about this, like, price differentiation within MLS jerseys with replicas and authentics, is I honestly think Adidas views Major League Soccer as a training ground for ideas. And I think this is what we're going to see more of in the future with authentic kits in Europe now. Like,
sadly, you're 100% correct. That's got to be what's happening.
It's a way to prey on your most arduous and committed fans. They want to wear what the people are wearing on the field, and if that means spending an extra $60, and when we're talking about $90 replicas that don't even look like the fucking shirt that's being worn on the field.
Exactly. I'm paying $90 and I'm getting what exactly?
90, I mean, frankly, I'm not at all surprised that we're seeing the top kits over $100 now. Like, that's just, it's a reality that's been coming forever.
Authentic with no name on it is $139.
That's
$139.
That's absurd. That should be a customized price. I don't think it's unrealistic to be like, hey, an authentic jersey that's not customized will cost you $100. Like, I just don't, like, in today's market, I think that's relatively reasonable. But $139 for a non-customized kit, like that's. Yeah, I did not give my wanker to this, but I it's a fantastic pick.
Your wanker.
My wanker. I feel like I'm just gonna hit them as often as possible over the next year. But I'm going back to Qatar. Qatar just keeps doing Qatar things. This time they sentenced a Mexican woman who's on the World Cup organizing committee in Qatar, who's supposed to be working on diversity and inclusiveness, to 7 years in prison and 100 lashes for, what is that? Oh yeah, for being sexually abused. It's just unbelievable this country was given a World Cup. It's truly mind-boggling that a tournament that is supposed to be the embodiment of like Western ideals. Like there's nothing more capitalist than the World Cup. Going to this country that has such ass backward morals, that they would sentence someone who reported a rape, a sexual assault. They are sanctioning them for having premarital sex.
And has FIFA been reached for comment on this?
They've been so far pretty mum about it. Now, luckily, she was able to sneak her way out of the country before that punishment was handed down. But of course, like now she has to worry about extradition for the rest of her life. Not to mention the lingering effects of being sexually assaulted by a coworker, no less, a coworker.
So someone working for FIFA.
Right?
It's going great, everybody.
It's just, I'm going to hit them as often as possible. I'm not going to be like someone who boycotts the World Cup because I'm not that strong-willed of a human being.
I know. That's how I am.
But I'm going to the whole way, I'm just going to like bitch and moan about how awful this entire situation is.
Yeah. No, that's
it's my commitment to you listeners.
This is just, we just finished the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, which is generally my favorite.
Brutal.
But it was in China.
Worst Olympics by
easily the crappiest Olympics.
Oh my
ever.
God, it was so
no
terrible.
Fans. Everybody hated being there.
They let a girl who literally had a positive test in competition continue skating because of geopolitical nonsense.
Yeah.
Putin was going to invade Ukraine even if you didn't let that girl skate.
It was just the warm-up act for this. Like, it was just like, it's like, man, if we just kept the Olympics going, would he not be invading? Can we just keep him occupied with more Olympics? Like what?
They should have stacked the World Cup right after this. Like that would have kept it out a little bit longer.
Well, don't worry. While it does sound like they're looking into a venue change, current setting for the Champions League final is St. Petersburg.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? It's truly unbelievable. UEFA and FIFA are like so. They're like and
the IOC. They're the IOC in there.
Yeah, the IOC is that way too. But they're all like, they're not going to really be that open and corrupt. Oh my God, they are being that open and corrupt in public. Like they're just.
Oh yeah.
Think how many major world sporting events have been in China and Russia over the last 8 years. The Winter Olympics.
This is the second time that Beijing has had the Olympics since I was in college.
Yeah. So that's like, we're talking 12, 15, 14
2008,
years. 16
2008,
years. 2008.
Summer Games in Beijing. And now we just had the 2022 Winter Games in Beijing.
Plus, we had a World Cup in Russia, and we had a Winter Olympics in Russia.
Yeah.
And now twice in China. I mean, it's amazing that they just don't give a shit.
So does that mean the next Winter Olympics is in Qatar?
In one of those indoor
ski resorts
facilities? Yeah. The downhill will just be on, like the guy will have to do 6 segments of that indoor facility.
The big air could get dangerous.
Yeah, it really could.
He's hit the rafters.
Oh crap! That's 3 of them up there now. Yeah, let's close this thing out with winners because we need to brighten this up after that delicious.
Okay, my winner, I don't know how bright it is because ultimately it was still not a great situation. It's finally been resolved, and that is U.S. Women's National Team and USSF have come to a settlement.
Yeah, that was mine too.
So, I mean, it's good that that's over. Still doesn't mean that suddenly USSF is making good choices and keeping it clean and, allowing themselves to be run by the right people or, possibly the wrong people aren't running for office currently for the USSF. It's not like any of those are still happening, right? So we're good. Everything's fine.
Yeah. This is everything. I mean, I definitely made sure to clarify that my winner was the Players Association here.
Right.
And not US Soccer, because like they're doing this because they've been made to.
Right.
Like, that's the important part to always remember about this. But I mean, they're forking out $24 million to the Women's Players Association. They're going to guarantee that all pay moving forward will be the same. And also there are some like guarantees that they're going to press FIFA to try to do the same with their prize money, which will never happen.
Like, yeah, we'll shoot them an email.
Yeah. We'll ask about it the next time there's a general meeting. Like, yeah, that's all we can promise. And literally that is pretty much all they can promise there. But yeah, it's a great, I think it is great from a women's, not just sport, but women's employment standpoint. Like, it's something that was very visible, and I've been the first to admit it was far more complex than I think it was being painted in the generalized media and even in soccer media sometimes. But it was the appropriate result, and I'm glad that it's over, because U.S. Soccer needs to not be spending so much money on legal matters if they can help it. Yeah.
Also needs to, like, USSF needs to be in the news for maybe good things at some point in time in the next couple of years.
Hopefully, make a World Cup. That'll really help things.
Yes, make a World Cup to Qatar.
Yeah, damn it. Drag it back there. That brings us to the end of this week's show, I think.
Yep.
All right. If you want to get a hold of us for whatever reason, we're here for you. Jeremy's at Jeremy Lance on Twitter. I'm at Wrong Side of Pond. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.